Let's talk about this guy. He's one of a whole horde of monsters I drew a long time ago. I was trying, for my therapist, to draw my emotional landscape. What I figured out was that I don't have an emotional landscape. What I have is a group chat full of naughty little trolls. I'm made entirely of monsters. And today, with a little polymer clay, I'm going to try to make one real. I should admit now that I've never done this before. Hi, I'm Jane. I don't know what the heck I'm doing. Welcome to Agitated Spiders. Let's make stuff. Okay, not gonna lie, this is gonna be quite a ride. We've got bad decisions, unforeseen landmines, and unnecessary lessons, plus some botched communication, and at the end, something sticky. Now, first thing, I said I'd never done this before, and that's sort of a lie. I did a practice figure first. He came from this drawing, and he looks like this. He wasn't easy. He fell over a lot, his teeth and horns got busted multiple times, and there's something not okay about his ears. But he's here now, and he needs a friend, so we're making this guy. And yeah, I do have two monsters called anger. The red one is Roger. He's angry, and it's his job to make somebody pay. The guy on the right is Jeff.
My name is Jeff.
He's angry too, but like if somebody dropped a ham on his big toe, he can't do anything but scream. To get started, I learned from other YouTubers that armatures are a good thing to do, so let's do one of those. My armature is made from this weird wire I found in the basement. I gave that wire and a drawing to my assistant, and she came back with this. There's also a tail. It's not attached. I'm not entirely sure my assistant thought this through. But with our armature done and fattened up with foil and tape, let's do clay. Now's a good time to talk about what I believe will be Jeff's biggest challenge: balance. In the drawing, he's jumping up in the air. I can suspend him there by inserting a clear rod into his backside. This was not Jeff's favorite option. More importantly, I don't have a clear rod, so I'm going to try to balance him on just the toes of one foot like a wee, screaming ballerina. Now let's do butt. I bet you didn't think we'd get to butt stuff so early, but we do things differently here on the West Coast. I probably should have done his thighs and stuff first, but the butt part is the part I'm most confident about. I've seen a lot of butts. Fun fact, my mom called her butt her hiney, which isn't remarkable, but she called the front part of her underside the fronty. Oh my god, the cringe. 'Cause why can't she just say baby cannon like the rest of us? But here we are now, making a fronty, which in Jeff's case, fortunately, is just his face. His face covers his whole body. He's going to need a big slab of chin, one that goes all the way down to his knees like a fupa. Or maybe it's chin balls? Once you see it, you can't unsee it. When that's mostly stable, let's cut him a mouth. And oh, look, I'm using a stupid tool for that. How about a knife, Jane? You like knives, don't you? And now, we reline his mouth with fleshy mouth stuff, and we make some lips, and we make a throat, and boy, it's all really lumpy. And then with some work, we get his fupa to flow gracefully into his thighs. Now I'm ready to sketch in some face details. To be clear, at this point, I didn't think it was a sketch. I thought I was drawing his actual face. It took me a while. It took me all the way until the next morning, after I'd sketched his face, to figure out that in sculpture, I have to actually build in 3D. The artful deployment of shading can only do so much magic. But let's put a pin in that for now. I also stuck in his tail, just above his butthole. Of course, it just drooped, because Omar didn't really think this through. So I secured it with some thinner wire, and then I just mushed on a bunch of clay, said an incantation, and left him for the night. Do not hire me to build a bridge. I'm no engineer. The weight of his fupa compressed the wire in his leg, and his flesh just broke. So, I degloved his legs and rebuilt them. After that's done, I check his mouth holes for size because the dentist is coming tomorrow to install his teeth. And then he gets a little sponge bath with isopropyl alcohol to make him smooth. And now, with his cracks filled, his meat replaced, his tail attached, and his flaps all freshly bathed, it's time for Jeff's first bake. Okay, this is that realization I mentioned earlier. As he came out of the oven all warm and hard, I recognized that his face was just going to be terminally stupid forever unless I built him some cheeks. So I spent a half a day making face stuff. And that work finished just as the dentist arrived, so I'm sending him off to get his teeth installed while I sit down with some pie. Post-pie, post-dentist, I had another realization. There's a problem with his mouth. It's too shallow. I don't know what these anger monsters eat, but it's for sure that not enough of it will fit in that mouth. I need his throat to be way back in his body, like right next to his butthole. At human scale, that gives him about a 3-inch alimentary canal, and it's pretty much horizontal. So I don't wonder that he's always upset. Nevertheless, we got to do the oral surgery. So I remove his fresh dental work, and then I cut open his throat and dig it out really deep so it extends way back into the back of his skull. And then I re-add the fleshy mouth parts and, hope the sutures heal. And then we can insert his teeth and beefed up gums and beefed up lips. Now you may notice here that I'm not using any Bacon Bond. That's because I don't have any Bacon Bond. The store several blocks away and requires money. Now let's have a long chat about feet. I built some. I don't have footage of it. I forgot you were here. Thank you for coming to my TED Talk. But toes are fun. I like making toes. And with that done, it's time for a second bake. He's way more fun when he's baked. Now I can really see just how crappy his skin is. He's also got some hilarious foot symmetry problems. He has one long foot with an appropriately slender ankle and one super short foot with a stumpy cankle. Also, Omar made a real mess of his tail, and I made some miscalculations on the top of his head. But here's the thing. Polymer clay has a superpower, and I'm happy because that superpower involves knives. So I'm trimming his ears, and I'm shaving off some of the phrenology on the top of his head, and today's leg day, so let's get to work on those cankles and arches. Hey, you want to ruin your day? Imagine you're having the soles of your feet carved and sanded. You're welcome. Alright, I start with a simple pale gray primer that I stole from my husband's miniature bench. The bench where he paints miniatures. He's 6'6", a miniature bench wouldn't stand a chance. But now here's the thing about painting Jeff. It's terrifying. First of all, look at him. His color in the drawing pretty much just comes from banging the smudge tool around in Photoshop. But this is sculpture. I have to actually know what I'm doing here. And I don't. I don't even know what color this is. Also, I don't have the right paint for the job. Not in an I don't have any fancy acrylics kind of way. No, literally, I do not own blue or yellow acrylic paint. The basics. But again, I reiterate, the store is blocks away and requires money. I'm powerless. So I'm working with a little bit of acrylic paint that I had in my stash. It's black and white and red. And then I've got a tragic collection of gouache that hopefully I can mix with the acrylics to make other colors. But if you've ever worked with gouache, you know it's the devil. I did, however, find a bunch of glues and sealers in the basement, and I'm hoping I can use them to help when the gouache acts like a jerk. First, I paint his eyes because I do have black acrylic. It's the blue of his underside where I'm going to need to use gouache. And yeah, I was scared. Turns out I had a reason to be. Mixing gouache and acrylic technically can work, but it makes the gouache angry. Angry gouache is blotchy and stubborn. It took me 3 coats to finally calm it down. But with that done, I have to go to work on the far more terrifying part of him, which is the gradient that slides up his sides. I worked in wet layers, hoping I'm beloved of the gods, and dabbing for dear life with toilet paper, which, by the way, is a terrible blotter. I don't know why we even use it on our fronties. But the store is blocks away, and also money. And there's toilet paper right here. Maybe if I'm persistent enough. Eventually I had to pee. So I got the wet wipes out of the linen closet, and that was much better. The paint still looked like it didn't want to be there, but everybody says trust the process, so okay bitches, I'm trusting the process. Even though this is not a process anyone would recommend. I continued on and off camera, just blotting and dabbing and praying to the material gods until the gouache got catastrophically sad and I had to make it an offering. So I handed Jeff over to the husband to seal with a workable fixative in the basement. With it sealed, I could start building up more layers and colors and add more detail and nuance. Except, no paint except pure acrylic would stick. The best I could do was a blotchy wash. This is not how a matte workable fixative should behave. You're supposed to be able to paint on it. I do it all the time with paper. I kept going way longer than I should have here. I was hoping maybe I could conquer this with sheer force of will. Eventually I gave up and switched to the tail where I could use pure acrylic. I neglected to make a plan for the tail at all, but I figured in the moment, you can't go wrong with black and white stripes. Why, yes, I have watched a lot of Tim Burton films. Batman Returns was a masterpiece. Shut up. After striping the tail and adding some washes and details where I could on the white parts, I went back to stabbing around randomly with washes and blotting. And at this point, I was just trying to get an acceptable mix of pimples and mange. It was then, after a long day of mostly failure, that I had a conversation with the husband. Hey honey, when you sealed the paint on Jeff, did you use my workable fixative, husband of mine, whom I love and do not wish to strangle? The husband is a writer and therefore a master of the English language. I sent him back downstairs to hit Jeff with the right sealer. It's okay. I know where he sleeps. And now, finally, with that zap of matte fixative and the paint's actually working again, Jeff is prepared to receive his final ablutions. I thought I'd knock back the mange with some dry brushing. And that's when the magic happened. Suddenly, Jeff's skin started to look real. And where there's magic skin, there's gross ear hair. See, while I was failing at painting, I was watching Dan Does. He was making these unsettling little creatures called grotties. In the process, he was embedding hairs everywhere like a madman. Knuckle hairs, whiskers, toe fluff. It was genuinely inspiring to me. But since Jeff was already baked, it was a little bit too late for me to start embedding knuckle hair. However, I could give him super gross ear hair, and that would be satisfying. So, while fantasizing about replacing my husband with a competent British ginger who understands polymer clay, I grabbed some twine and some glue, and I dressed Jeff's ears up like he's my grandfather. And with that, it was pretty much done. Or so I thought. With Jeff all painted, I gathered some blocks of wood from my stash, I got a handful of rocks from the yard, and I tried to make a base. And the base part went pretty well. But mounting Jeff upright was challenging. He just kept slumping to the front or breaking his ankle multiple times. Poor baby. After a great deal of negotiation, I found the right combination of rocks and glue, and Jeff could stand on his own. And that's when I realized why his foot couldn't support it. The armature wire I used, it wasn't armature wire. It was solder. I will not be taking questions at this difficult time. Now all I have to do is fix one more problem. Alright, real talk. I should explain this seriously in case you think anything I've shown you here is prescriptive. No matter how adventurous you are, I do not want you making the mistake I made. Because Jeff and his friend Roger were all finished, but they were sticky, and it wasn't going away. And leaving them to dry wasn't helping. So let's review why. First, I used gouache because I only had black, white, and red acrylic, and that seemed boring. So I threw the gouache in and hoped for the best. Secondly, I was chanting "trust the process" in my head so loudly that I pushed through a lot of clues that a disaster was building. And finally, no matter what, I wasn't going to go to the store. I love these monsters, but I don't love them enough to spend money on acrylics, which wouldn't have needed a sealer, when that money could be used instead to buy things I don't normally find abandoned in the basement, like cat food or Cheez-Its or, healthcare. So I did what I always do when the gouache gets sad. I used a fixative, which turns out to be a terrible idea with polymer clay. And it's not just because Scott used the wrong sealer at first. Apparently, some sealers, and it's brand specific, cause a chemical reaction with the polymer clay, and the clay gets sticky, and it stays sticky, sometimes forever. Some Googling led me to this goddess of art supplies. She tested all the major brands of polymer clay with every brand of sealer she could find in the US and the UK. I know. From her, I learned that both of the Krylon sealers we used were on her sticky list. So yeah, the workable sealer made the gouache happy, but it created a bigger problem for Jeff in the long run. He was not going to be happy being sticky. Are you happy when you're sticky? I don't think so. I'll leave links to her findings in the description so you can find out if you're going to make your little guy sticky using random crap you found in the basement. As for myself, if I'd just gone to the store and bought the right stuff, none of this would have happened. Her best recommendation to fix the sticky problem was to seal everything with a non-stickiness causing water-based polyurethane, preferably Varathane or Minwax polyacrylic, and then stop doing weird chemical experiments with my sculpture. I coated Jeff and Roger with the still marginally viable Minwax we found in the basement, and now they're safe to frolic together forever. Want to see? Let's review the lessons we learned from Jeff. Number 1, blame the staff. Number 2, the husband cannot be trusted and should be replaced. Number 3, don't make the paint angry. And we'll add this unexpected lesson: depend on the kindness of strangers on the internet. Thank you for joining me as I got in way over my head and barely dug myself out. There's a big chance I'll do the same thing in my next long-form video, so subscribe! If you like bad decisions, wrong tools, and unhinged craft adventures, you know what to do. Subscribe for more embarrassing carnage, and offer a sacrifice to the algorithm gods with the like button. If you're not a fan of disasters but know someone who might be, share this video with them. Now scoot, go make stuff! I'm a bag of agitated spiders.